Welcome back to my channel. Today I just wanted to go over my postpartum experience slash journey because I feel like I'm still going through the thick of it. But before I get into that, I wanted to give you some background on my history with depression and anxiety, and then also give you a little bit of information on my pregnancy so you can just understand the depth of my postpartum depression and anxiety. So if this is something that you're interested in, keep watching. So I've had a history of depression and anxiety for many moons now. I would say that by the time I realized that I had it, it was right around the time I graduated high school. My dad had died, and then a couple years later, my sister also died and my grandparents, so it was a lot. So when it comes to my depression and my anxiety, I would say the loss of my family members are most certainly a trigger. Now, as far as my pregnancy, I did not have a good pregnancy at all. I hated every single moment of being pregnant for the most part, and there was times that I even regretted being pregnant. And I know that sounds so horrible, but I was just so sick. I was alone. I didn't have no one to turn to. When I did talk about my struggles, I would get comments like, at least you can get pregnant, which, yeah, I understand. I'm extremely blessed and that wasn't my issue. It was just I was always so sick. Or I would get comments like, well, you wanted to be pregnant. And so when things like that happen and you're going through such a drastic change with your body and your emotions, it doesn't help the situation. And I actually did become depressed in my pregnancy. When I say sick, I mean sick. I was throwing up through my entire pregnancy from the beginning to the end. I actually had to go to the hospital a few times because I couldn't keep anything down and I was dehydrated. When I would throw up, I would throw up so hard that I actually busted blood vessels in my face. On top of all of that, I was considered high risk because I just struggled so much. And I just remember there's times where I would go to my doctor's appointment and just cry to my doctor and tell her that I don't have a bond and that I don't talk to my stomach and that I'm not excited, that I just wish I wasn't pregnant. And then I felt so much guilt for even thinking those thoughts because although I was struggling so much, I already knew how much I loved my son. So you're just at this, you're having this battle with yourself of wishing you weren't pregnant, but then also excited of growing that life inside of you and just wanting your child to be here. So getting into my postpartum depression, I think one of the main triggers for myself are the expectations that I had for breastfeeding. My goal was to exclusively breastfeed and be able to produce enough to where I would be able to freeze it and then give it to my son later, but that just was not the case for me at all. When Mason was 1 week old, we actually had to start supplementing formula because he had developed jaundice, and then also he had lost like, I think it was like 13% of his birth weight. So I wasn't producing enough on my own, so I had to give him formula. Now, when they told me that he had jaundice and that he lost so much of his weight, just telling me like, if you don't get this taken care of, that your son can possibly have mental retardation, and just like listing everything that can go wrong. And I freaked out. I broke down. I cried. And I feel like that was like the first time that I really blamed myself for everything that was going on, even though I knew it wasn't my fault. I wasn't able to produce enough breast milk during my journey, so he definitely was more on formula. I gave him breast milk first, and then I would give him a bottle of formula, so at least he still had the nutrition from my milk. And then I got down on myself, or I kind of felt embarrassed because, like I said, the expectations I had for myself were to breastfeed my son, and because I couldn't, I felt ashamed. I didn't want to take pictures of him drinking out of a bottle because then I felt like people were gonna judge me. When people asked if I was breastfeeding him or giving him formula, again, I felt ashamed to answer that because I felt like the right thing to do was to breastfeed, and obviously that wasn't the case. Now I know the most important thing was for him to get the nutrition that he needed, whether it was from me or from formula, and he is a healthy growing boy, so obviously everything that I did for him worked. One of my biggest triggers was my sister's death anniversary. Every year, regardless if I had been pregnant or not, like a week or so before my sister's death anniversary, I just get so depressed and I miss her so much. So having those extra hormones in your system after giving birth, it just made things 10 times worse. I literally remember just crying and holding my son and rocking him and feeling like crap because I'm supposed to be happy and I'm sitting here so sad, like sobbing, like ugly crying, tears, red eyes, poofy. And then also feeling so sad that my sister will never have the opportunity of meeting my son and holding him, and my son will never know my sister. I mean, I know that he'll know her through the memories that we speak of, but it's a different feeling, you know? And then another major trigger for me was when I was about 7 weeks postpartum, or maybe I was just out of that 6 weeks. I had just saw my doctor. So right after that, we found out that my mom was diagnosed with cancer. She had kidney failure. She was anemic. There was so much going on. So that in itself I was a mess. I didn't know how to handle it. I cried. Like the first thought that went through my head was my mom's gonna die, and how am I supposed to go on? I know it sounds very morbid, and in like times like these, you're supposed to look at the bright side, but given my history of already losing a parent, losing a sibling, losing grandparents, like to me, that was something that is a great possibility. So I got super depressed and I just did not know how to handle it. I felt very alone because no one could truly understand how I was feeling, and I didn't know how to talk about it. And when I would try to talk about it, I couldn't get my thoughts together, so it was just a mess. And then at that point, because I was already out of the 6-week window, I couldn't even talk to my doctor about it, and I kind of got the runaround and had to essentially wait like 2 weeks before talking to someone about how I was feeling. And by that point, I had already dealt with my own emotions, and I don't know if maybe I suppressed them because, you know, that's what I do. Or just kind of, you know, work through them as best as I could. So by the time, you know, someone came along, I was just like, oh, okay, yeah, well, I'm getting through it. Just going through this is hard because I don't know if you guys can relate to this, but I'm the type of person that I'm always there for people. I always take care of people. I always want to make people feel better. So when it's time for someone to take care of me and the way that I take care of them, and it doesn't happen that way, I just shut down. And I mean, I know that's something that I have to work on, but I guess it's just those expectations that I have. But I guess it's just like one of those things where you treat people how you want to be treated, and when that doesn't happen, it can be lonely, you know? When I was feeling like super down, I would text one of my best friends, which is Mason's godmother, and just talk to her. And even if we didn't have like a full-on conversation, I would just like express how I was feeling, and then just her acknowledgement of it made me feel better, because it made me feel like I was heard and that I wasn't going crazy and that my feelings were valid. So in a sense, that helped me move forward with the healing process. I'm still trying to work through and deal and handle everything. I don't have all the answers. But my biggest piece of advice to give would be to just talk to someone that you trust to get it out. Even if you're not able to get everything out, just get whatever you're able to vocalize, and I promise you that'll make you feel so much better and make me feel so much better. Another thing that I felt contributed to my postpartum anxiety is I really wanted to wait 3 months before taking Mason out, just because he wasn't vaccinated yet, and just when babies are born, they don't have an immune system and they can't fight things off. And he was born in late August, so that was around flu season. And I felt like we received a lot of criticism on it. People would poke jokes and tell me like, oh, well, you can't keep him living in a bubble forever, or how is he supposed to build an immune system if you're keeping him indoors, or you're not like exposing him to all of that, which I understand that it's good to expose them, but at the same time, when they're newborns, that's when they're the most vulnerable to all of that. So I felt it was my responsibility and my job to keep him protected. And because of those comments and criticism, that definitely heightened my anxiety, because I was like, am I overreacting? Or, you know, kind of like self-doubt. But then also I had to be assertive and know that what I'm doing and the things that I choose to do is what's right. I also think what helped a lot in those circumstances is that my husband was on my side, and he also agreed that, you know, like right now it's not the time, but once he gets older, then we won't have a problem going out and, you know, basically handing them off to other people, because that's what happens when you go out, you go to family events or just anywhere. People, they want to see your baby, and I just didn't feel comfortable with him being that young for him to be passed around. When it came down to like who's gonna watch my baby, that gave me so much anxiety, because as a parent, you know what your baby, like their cries, you know, their cry if they're sleepy or they're hungry or they're just overwhelmed. So the thought of someone else being there for my child when I'm not there just freaked me out, and I just could not deal. It felt more comfortable if someone was there and I was in the same house, at least a room away. That made me feel a lot better. My goal of sharing my experiences is, one, maybe this can help someone that is like me, that doesn't know how to talk through things but wants to get things off their chests, or also just so you don't feel alone. And two, I'm hoping that it'll be therapeutic for me too, just being able to talk about things that I plan on doing differently moving forward. If, God willing, we are able to have another baby, I think I would want to talk about the process in the beginning. I know there's like this big stigma that, no, wait until you're out of the first trimester to talk about it, because you don't know what could happen, which it's true, but also it's so isolating and so lonely. Even if I bring it to YouTube and talk about any process that I go through super early, and God forbid something bad happen, at least I can help someone, and hopefully in return that will help me. And I know I rambled a lot. I didn't want to make this video too long. It's so hard for me to get my thoughts in order and articulate everything that I'm going through, But if there's something that I missed or something that you heard that you want me to go more in depth, let me know in the comments down below and I'd be happy to expand on it. If you have any advice for me or any ways that you deal with things, also let me know. I'm interested in knowing how you ladies go through this, because it is a very traumatic thing to go through, and we have to stick together. We have to be each other's support. I know it's difficult to be vulnerable and to have all of this going on, especially like our bodies change, our whole world changes with kids. So it's just nice to talk about it all. If you like this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And I'll see you in the next one.